Collaborative predation in global nationalism, a table of comparison. This table summarizes the co-predation analysis of 8 nationalist movements, highlighting their exploited resources, impacts on marginalized groups, and threats to liberal democracy. Nationalist movement, predator-predator collaborators, exploited entity, resource, impact on marginalized groups, direct threat to liberal democracy. Examples: Christian nationalism, U.S., white evangelical Christian groups, right-wing political ideologies, sexual and gender minorities, racial minorities, immigrants, unification against sexual, gender minorities, increased prejudice, undermining pluralism, promotion of specific conservative Christianity, opposition to LGBT rights, January 6th insurrection. Hindu nationalism, India, Hindu nationalist groups, Modi's regime, Muslim minorities, other religious ethnic minorities, increased violence and discrimination against Muslims, promotion of Hindu identity at expense of secular values, citizenship laws targeting Muslims, communal violence. Jewish nationalism, Israel, right-wing government, alliances with Christian nationalists, Palestinian populations, ethnic minorities, policies impacting Palestinian and minority rights, conflict with democratic principles, focus on Jewish identity, policies in Palestinian territories, complex relations with Hamas. Islamic nationalism, Saudi Arabia, ruling monarchy, Islamic religious institutions, minority religious groups, women, political dissidents, enforcement of strict Islamic laws limiting minority rights, intertwining of religion with state governance, policies on women's rights, treatment of dissenters. Viktor Orban's Hungary, Orban's Fidesz party, nationalist groups, ethnic and linguistic minorities, marginalized groups within Hungary, creation of divisions among minorities, undermining civil liberties, shift from liberal democracy to autocratic regime, support for Hungarian minorities in Ukraine, media control. Vladimir Putin's Russia, Russian state, allied oligarchs, political dissidents, ethnic minorities, LGBTQ+ community, suppression of minority rights, repression of political opponents, erosion of democratic norms, internal repression, treatment of Alexei Navalny, anti-LGBTQ+ legislation. Bashar al-Assad's Syria, Assad regime, external, internal military forces, Syrian opposition, ethnic and religious minorities, widespread human rights abuses against minorities, authoritarian governance, suppression of dissent, Syrian civil war, use of chemical weapons. Jair Bolsonaro's Brazil, Bolsonaro's government, far-right supporters, indigenous communities, environmental activists, LGBTQ+ community, detrimental policies against indigenous rights and environmental protections, attacks on press, environmental regulations, democratic institutions, deforestation of Amazon, rhetoric against LGBTQ+ rights. Key takeaways. All 8 movements exhibit co-predation dynamics, collaborating to maintain power at the expense of marginalized groups and democratic principles. Exploited resources vary but often include religious, ethnic, and political minorities. Marginalized groups face increased discrimination, violence, and suppression of rights. Liberal democracy is threatened by the undermining of pluralism, institutions, and individual freedoms. Specific examples illustrate the tangible effects of these policies on various groups and democratic norms. This table provides a concise overview of the co-predation model's application to global nationalism, highlighting the complex interplay between power dynamics, marginalized groups, and the erosion of democratic values. Further considerations. The table could be expanded to include additional nationalist movements or specific regional trends. The analysis could delve deeper into the internal dynamics and potential fractures within each movement. The potential for resistance and counter-movements by marginalized groups and democratic actors could be explored. By continuing to analyze and understand these complex power struggles through the lens of co-predation, we can better identify the threats to democracy and develop strategies to protect marginalized communities and uphold democratic values globally.